I don't get the feeling he would want you to be him.
No, he never did.
Right?
He enjoyed playing with me. That was one of his favorite things, and it was a big reason.
Imagine opening your eyes for the first time and hearing an electric guitar screaming through the hallway instead of lullaby. Wolfgang Van Halen was born into a thunderstorm of riffs and applause, and the noise never really stopped. Everyone on Earth saw his dad, Eddie Van Halen, bend music into wild new shapes on stage. Yet behind those blazing spotlights, young Wolfgang was watching a very different man and learning a very private lesson. What did Eddie act like when the red lights were off? Why did Wolfgang later lock every classic Van Halen song inside a vault of silence after his father passed away? Get ready, because this is a hidden story that almost no one hears, and the truth might leave you breathless. Growing up Van Halen, Wolfgang William Van Halen entered a house that never slept. His mother, TV favorite Valerie Bertinelli, kept the cameras rolling at home while Eddie chased fresh sounds in the studio. Fame sat at the breakfast table, but so did unspoken rules about patience, listening, and loyalty. Music was not just background noise. It felt like oxygen. When most kids practiced their ABCs, Wolfgang tapped drums in the living room while his dad noodled with brand new licks in the next room. Eddie made one promise to himself. He would never force his son to become a copy of him. So he left instruments scattered around the house like toys, just waiting to ignite curiosity. At 9, Wolfgang started banging on hand-me-down drums for fun. On his 10th birthday, Eddie rolled in a real kit, and that gift was more than shiny gear. It was a silent handshake between father and son. Eddie often taped loose melodies on an old cassette recorder. Little Wolfgang raced to copy those beats, turning practice into a top-secret game that only the two of them understood. A one-kid band forms. Drums open the door, yet Wolfgang walked straight through to every other instrument. He tinkered with guitar, bass, and piano for hours, hunting fresh sounds simply because it felt magical. Importantly, he did not chase headlines. He wanted his own voice, even while house walls shook with Eddie's famous Frankenstrat solos. By his early teens, it was clear the kid had an uncanny ear. In 2006, at only 15, Wolfgang jumped from bedroom jams to global arenas as Van Halen's brand new bassist. The decision shocked plenty of die-hard fans. Was this nepotism or natural growth? Insiders whispered that the move felt like destiny, not favoritism. The teenager already knew every arrangement, every tempo shift, and every secret cue. Baptism by spotlight. Imagine stepping on stage before thousands, next to the man the entire crowd considers a guitar wizard. Wolfgang did it night after night with surprising calm. Even critics who expected a train wreck ended up praising his tight timing and fresh energy. He respected the classic sound, yet glued the band together with a punchy new groove. That poise shone on Van Halen's 2012 album A Different Kind of Truth. His bass lines felt fearless yet respectful, carving space for Eddie's fireworks while powering the engine underneath. For Wolfgang, every show was a father-son memory frozen under strobe lights. They traveled together, ate together, laughed at inside jokes, then stepped into deafening cheers side by side. Those nights mattered even more because Eddie was quietly fighting a brutal battle with cancer, a shared race against time. Doctor's appointments, treatments, and worry could have stopped any tour cold. Eddie refused. He needed that stage, and he needed his son on it with him. Wolfgang later said those final tours felt like they were writing their life story in real time, one chord at a time. Crowds only saw sweat, smiles, and blistering solos. Backstage, father and son counted each healthy day like gold coins. Genius carries a heavy weight. Eddie Van Halen did not just change guitar playing. He reinvented the rules of possibility. His two-hand tapping turned fretboards into roller coasters of sound that nobody had ridden before. He built the homemade Frankenstrat from spare parts and duct tape because no store-bought guitar matched the tone he heard in his head. Every knob twist and harmonic squeal came from endless experiments driven by pure curiosity. One shining example stunned the entire industry in 1982. He dropped by a studio to track a solo from Michael Jackson's Beat It. He listened twice, pressed record, and unleashed 30 seconds of lightning that fused pop and rock for good. Fame and fortune already sat at his door, yet Eddie still chased new thrills inside every note. That restless spirit, though, had a dark twin, the battle within. Addiction stalked Eddie's steps for years. Alcohol and other vices slipped into late-night sessions and stole quiet mornings. The struggle was rarely splashed across tabloids, but it chewed at family peace and band schedules all the same. Wolfgang watched it all, sometimes scared, sometimes frustrated, always hoping music would pull his dad back into the light. Throughout those storms, Eddie kept playing, because music was both shield and sword. He once said he treated the guitar like a tool without a manual. That mindset pushed him to test every boundary, but it also meant he could never rest. Perfectionism gnawed at him. If a solo did not feel like lightning in a bottle, he chased it until sunrise, no matter the cost of his health. A vow of silence. When Eddie finally lost his long fight with cancer in 2020, Wolfgang was devastated. Fans begged him to perform Van Halen classics on stage as a tribute. He said no. The songs carried too much raw emotion and reopened wounds that still bled. Playing them without Eddie felt like reading a diary entry out loud at a stranger's party. Far too personal. Instead, Wolfgang launched his own project, Mammoth WVH, and wrote brand new music that saluted his dad without imitating him. He poured every lesson learned at kitchen table jam sessions into riffs that stood tall on their own. That decision shocked some listeners, yet honored the private promise he shared with his father. Always be authentic. The silence around classic Van Halen material became a living monument to Eddie's influence and a fierce guardrail for Wolfgang's independence. Why it matters. Most people picture Eddie Van Halen as a grinning rock hero who never missed a note. Few understand the hidden weight he carried or the steady courage his son had to show while walking beside him. Wolfgang was not a child star chasing lazy fame. He was a caretaker, a bandmate, and finally a grieving son who chose respect over nostalgia. Today, every Mammoth WVH song is a new brick in the path Wolfgang builds forward. Yet every beat, bend, and lyric also echoes the private conversations he once had with father who spoke best through six strings. And that is the layer of the Van Halen saga that most headlines skip. Behind the thunderous shows, there was a whisper between generations, a promise to keep creating without copying. That promise still roars through every amplifier Wolfgang plugs in, proving that legacies can shout without repeating the past. Picture Eddie Van Halen ripping through a solo while an invisible storm of addiction clutched his soul. In blunt interviews, he admitted that the bottle was sometimes close in the fretboard, especially during the dizzy height of Van Halen's fame. Crowds begged for nightly miracles, and that pressure welded itself to Eddie's perfectionism until the stage felt like a cage. When he missed the mark, he lashed out, not from ego, but from fear that the music might slip below brilliant for even one beat. Inside the band, sparks flew, rotating lead singers, backstage shouting matches, and crater-deep disagreements grabbed headlines. Yet Eddie stayed immovable in his quest for flawless sound. He demanded the best because he believed the songs deserved nothing less. At home, the fire cooled into something softer. Wolfgang remembered late-night meals, shared jokes, and jam sessions where the outside world vanished. Still, he also saw the fog, days when addiction dulled Eddie's sparkle and treatments left him drained, yet determined. The early 2000s struck hard when doctors removed part of Eddie's tongue to beat cancer. Surgery, a failing hip, and collapsing energy stalked him, but he refused to surrender. He hid inside his studio, stacking hard drives with unheard riffs, racing to freeze ideas before time ran out. Friends noticed the worry lines. Physical pain merged with decades of regret, triumph, and what-ifs, creating a private weight heavier than any guitar. Through it all, Wolfgang stood firm, becoming both son and anchor. Eddie's genius needed redemption as much as applause. He saw that second chance in Wolfgang, someone who could inherit the fire without the chains. Their bond pushed Eddie toward sobriety whenever the shadows crept close. Yet Eddie's tale is more than amps and addictions. It is threaded with love that refused to die. Romance shaped his music and carved scars that never quite closed. The story began in 1981 when Eddie married rising sitcom star Valerie Bertinelli. Paparazzi labeled them a golden couple, but fame and touring quickly battered that fairy tale gloss. Still, one miracle emerged. Their son, Wolfgang, named after Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Eddie chose the name deliberately, honoring a master who blended technical fire with heart-rending beauty. As the years rolled on, addiction and distance toward the marriage. By 2001, they separated, finalizing divorce in 2007. Yet the breakup never shattered their commitment to Wolfgang. They co-parented with remarkable unity, proving love can change shape without disappearing. Valerie's tribute after Eddie's death revealed that depth. She wrote, "Maybe next time we'll get it right." One sentence carried decades of joy, hurt, and unbreakable respect. In 2009, Eddie remarried, exchanging vows with publicist and former stuntwoman Janie Lashevsky. Her calming presence turned roaring nights into quiet mornings. Though chaos lingered at the edges, Janie offered Eddie a gentler chapter filled with slow dinners and softer laughter. Watching these turns taught Wolfgang priceless lessons. He saw flare-ups, apologies, and the relentless effort it takes to hold love together. Those memories shaped his own heart. By 2023, Wolfgang wed longtime partner Andrea Alsop, a software engineer who steadied him through grief and the birth of his solo career. Their ceremony was tiny, but one empty chair screamed louder than any amplifier. The seat reserved for Eddie said, without words, that legacy still lives at every family table. Love for Wolfgang means honoring the past while refusing to stay trapped inside it. He found a partner willing to help carry history instead of being crushed by it. Together they built room for healing, proving scars do not forbid happiness. Eddie's romances were messy yet real, brimming with effort, mistakes, forgiveness, and surprising loyalty. Now Wolfgang channels those hard-won lessons into a marriage rooted in patience and mutual respect. Then came the longest silence of Wolfgang's life. On October 6th, 2020, the world lost its guitar hero, but he lost his dad. Stroke was the official cause. Yet Eddie had already endured countless surgeries and hidden agony. Wolfgang and Valerie held his hand until the final breath, watching a titan fade into quiet. That moment fractured Wolfgang's universe. The man who taught him to chase melodies, to wait for the perfect take, to believe in his own ears, was gone. There were no rehearsals for grief. Wolfgang found himself staring at reels of unfinished music, fan expectations, and a last name that suddenly felt heavier than steel. He was no longer only Eddie Van Halen's son. He was a guardian of Eddie's final echo. What did he do? He listened to the silence, honored it, and began writing fresh songs that held his father's spirit without copying his riffs. Each new track became both tribute and declaration. The legacy moves forward, yet the future belongs to Wolfgang. Every stage he steps onto now carries invisible footsteps beside him, but he makes sure the spotlight stretches wide enough for his own shadow, too. That balance, respecting heritage while forging new ground, is the ultimate melody Eddie left him to play. The months after Eddie's passing felt like standing on a floor that kept cracking under Wolfgang's feet. He told the world, "I've had so many dreams lately where Pop and I are just doing normal things, and then I realize it's a dream. I stop what I'm doing and hug him for as long as I can until I wake up." Every concert memory, every backstage joke, every quiet dinner, they all flashed through his mind like fireworks that suddenly went dark. Inside, grief pressed on his chest like a stone that refused to budge. Eddie's ashes rested in Wolfgang's hands, a heavy, holy trust. He sailed to the Malibu shoreline, the same water where Eddie once found calm, and let those ashes dance with the waves. Yet the ache only grew stronger, swallowing any spark of celebration. Fans begged for a tribute show, a reunion, a final blaze of Van Halen glory. Wolfgang stunned everyone by saying no. Songwriting, he explained, was therapy, and he could not play the classics without the man who made them roar. "I only want to play those songs of my father, and he's not here," he declared. Anything else felt like pretending the wound did not exist. Instead, he reached for a childhood promise and launched Mammoth WVH. That name echoed Eddie's first band and fulfilled the vow Wolfgang once whispered his dad. "One day my group will be called Mammoth." Their debut single, Distance, exploded with raw emotion. Written while Eddie's health faded, it served as a musical letter bathed in heartbreak. The video stitched together home movies of father and son laughing, wrestling, and dreaming. No screaming fans, just real life. Viewers saw Eddie not as a guitar deity, but as a goofy dad teaching a kid how to smile. The song went viral, earned a Grammy nod, and left Wolfgang in surreal disbelief. He pushed forward. Mammoth WVH, his self-titled album, dropped in 2021 and thundered with tight hooks, soaring melodies, and lyrics sharpened by honesty. Reviewers praised his craft, noting that he honored his bloodline without riding its coattails. During press runs, Wolfgang shared Eddie's greatest gift, permission to follow his own road. That blessing let him turn down expectations and crank up authenticity. With every live show, he proved grief can whisper yet still shake walls. He built fresh songs instead of tribute medleys, letting Eddie's spirit breathe in the silent spaces between new riffs. Years passed, but sorrow did not pack its bags. Just when viewers thought farewells were finished, Wolfgang revealed the tribute no one predicted. "Me simply existing and creating my own music is tribute enough," he said. Every stage he walks onto, every chord he writes from his own story. That is the living monument. Some fans grumbled, wanting Van Halen covers. Others misunderstood a light-hearted comment about Eddie's influence flooding the 1980s with imitators, twisting it into an insult. Wolfgang quickly set the record straight, reminding everyone that no one honored Eddie more fiercely than he did. The way of the Van Halen surname often feels like carrying an amplifier up a mountain, yet Wolfgang refuses to stagger. He remains close to his uncle Alex, Eddie's brother and the rhythmic backbone of Van Halen. Alex stays quiet in public, but stands tall behind Wolfgang, offering guidance and a heartbeat of family strength. Memories of Eddie pulse through every rehearsal, but Wolfgang's mission is crystal clear. Be the first Wolfgang, not the second Eddie. That choice dazzles some listeners and confuses others, yet keeps the legacy alive without turning it into a museum exhibit. So, what is your favorite memory of Eddie Van Halen? Share your stories below. If this journey moved you, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and dive into the next video for more untold legends.